It's Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're here on CMajor Before the Show. I'm your host, CMajor Porter. It's a great day. It really is. It's the first Saturday in March. And welcome to this podcast episode. We are talking about shoutouts today, just shoutouts. And we're going to add some humor today. We're going to talk about humor and music making, just staying more on the fun side today. Aren't you ready to have some fun? I hope so. And don't forget, we're going to be posting our fun music exercise. We used to call it homework, but now we're changing that. We're moving away from that. So we really want you to think about music making as being fun, as being playful, as being a chance for you to really do something you like to do, not something that you have to do, but at the same time, something that you take seriously. I mean, just because you have a sense of humor about what you're doing doesn't mean that you don't take your music making seriously. I think it's possible to do both. But stick with us today. We're going to get some shout outs mostly today, and then instead of a really serious piano lesson about chords or scales or pieces, I think what I'm going to do is just go over some terms with you, just some basic terms. That'll be the lesson today. And then, again, just keep it very light. How have you guys been? It's been a big week for a lot of people here in the greater New York area. We are live here on CMajor Before the Show. I missed you last weekend. And you know what happens when I'm away. It's because I'm doing something with my own teaching and becoming better and better at what I do. And so it's just nice to be back with you. The weather is okay. It was very sunny. Still a little bit on the cool side. I haven't been able to put away my long coat just yet. And I'm just waiting to see what this time change is going to do. So if you are anticipating tomorrow's time change like I am, then just know that I will post a reminder as well over at CMajor Before the Show on our Facebook page. So let's get to it. I wanted to start off with some shout outs. Normally I think I do the lesson first and then I come back and do the shout outs, but shout outs were at the top of my mind today. And really at the top of the list because I wrote down an outline. And by the way, I'm going to start doing that a little bit more. I'm very excited about some developments that are happening for our podcast. And so I'll say a little bit more about that. But reminding you again, spring forward, March 8th, 2020. That's tomorrow. It's that time of year again. So if you haven't already made your plans to go ahead and lose that hour of sleep, everybody's talking about it. And so for our Just Shoutouts episode, I want to give a first shout out to a very dedicated, talented student who is intent on learning 20 songs. Can you believe that? 20 songs. Give an applause for that. I don't think I've ever had that happen. I have never had a student say to me that they wanted to learn 20 songs to play on the piano for their friends and family, and being so charged up about it that every single song that they learn right away, they invite their friends and family to hear them play that song. I think that's just wonderful. And so he's halfway there. I'm encouraging him. We're making a list now. I mean, these are songs that he knows, his family knows, They have their favorite songs that are on this list. They make requests. They listen. They see if they recognize it. If not, he'll tell them what it is, and then they'll go, oh, yeah, it does sound like that. So he's working very, very hard. And I just want to give a really big cheer and a big shout out to this student. Wonderful. So more or less, if you've been following the podcast, we're in our over 200th episode here now. And so we're going to keep going. And so, I really try to give you updates basically on what my students are doing in the studio. And so it's always very exciting for me to give you those updates, and not that I'm bragging or anything like that. It's really just about sharing. I just love sharing this information because it's too much to keep inside when you're excited about what your students are doing. And don't think for one moment that the students don't shift. They do. I think that's just the nature of piano teaching, that you don't know where the shifts are going to be, and sometimes you're surprised and sometimes you're not so surprised, but we just keep going. Now, this is exciting for me because this student didn't know how good he was at piano until I started to challenge him. So he's learning to be a little bit more playful at the piano, and he's gaining his confidence, and he's feeling more comfortable with his hand positioning at the piano and the way that he's sitting. How sometimes students want to sit with a curved back, or they want to slump in some way, or they want to sit too close, and then you have to correct them. And then sometimes they don't want to keep their fingers curved, and you just have to be patient and just wait for them to really make it important to them. And this is one of those students. And so I showed the student this sheet music to challenge him, and you just wouldn't believe the expression on his face. He couldn't believe he was playing this music. Finally, he was able to play in a way that he had imagined and what he wanted to do over a year ago, but he just hadn't grown to do it yet. So very excited for this student, and learn to be more playful at the piano and playing the music that he likes and that he wants to hear, and getting the sound that he wants to hear at the piano. So big shout out to that student. My next shout out is for a student who is super, super talented. I mean, just really talented. I don't know how to say enough about this student, really. She surprises me. She really surprises me every time we have a lesson. There's always something that's bubbling that comes out in her talent and her ability to either transpose something very quickly, or to play something faster than we imagined that she would be able to play it, or to pick up something by ear, or to learn to play a simple part in a more difficult way. And then as she grows, she's looking to challenge herself to play more with more full harmonies and things like that. And so I'm really, really excited for this student, because now she's starting to volunteer to play in her community. Can you believe that? I didn't even think far ahead enough about what would happen once these students started to grow, that they would really want to volunteer to play for community events. And so it's just very exciting for me to hear that. I had no idea it was going to go in that direction for this particular student. So she's really kinesthetic just by nature, and likes to play music that involves dance, and at the same time just very, 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 very upbeat, and naturally upbeat, and just a very inspiring student. So shout out to her. Okay, now my next shout out is, it's a sensitive one. It really is. It's insensitive because in my growth as a piano teacher, I've learned to really step back and listen to what the students are saying. Not judging, not in a way that's saying, oh, you're having trouble with something. I didn't have that same trouble. I think in order to be fair to the students, and this is what I've really learned just from my professors, from my colleagues, is that you really have to just step back and see what they're saying. And so it just turns out that these particular students need help with just remembering visually what they're seeing. And so just knowing that there are teaching aids out there that can help with that is just so encouraging to me as a teacher. And so we're just getting to the point where we're finding the right teaching aids for them. That flashcards work for some students, they don't work for others. Other things such as stickers and other visual aids may work for students, and for other students, they just don't work as well. But just knowing that the market is available to us to grab something that's going to help our students. So I'm very excited about that. We have the support of the parents and the whole entire family, really, for helping them to become stronger readers, and at the same time just watching them grow. I mean, a lot of times what happens with piano students, I don't know who's listening to this who may agree, they think that just because a song is famous, that's why they should learn that song, rather than thinking, oh, maybe I could challenge myself to learn it even though it may not be well known. Maybe I could make the song famous. A lot of times students just don't think that way, but I want to really shout out these students because they have kept up with their lessons. So you just don't understand, with all of the interruptions that they've had to go through for one reason or another. Not saying it's bad or good, but interruptions don't help in a lot of cases, because if your learning style is such that you really need consistent lessons and you don't need a week off or 2 weeks off or a month off, sometimes it can be a little bit more, it can take longer for you to really get it. So saying that too, I want to encourage the parents, don't think just because your kids seem like they're behind in their lessons that they're not going to get it. I think that something will shift in the learning and they will get it. So thank you to the parents that give their support, that really stick by the lessons and just stay with it, and just know that solutions are on the way, that we will find a way to help this information to stick more. But shout out to these students who recognize their challenges and they're not giving up, and I really appreciate that. So shout out to them. Now, this one is a little happier shout out. I was talking with the students today and I said, you know what? It's a shame that piano is not a sport. I mean, if piano was a sport, oh my gosh, that would be my dream of a lifetime, to become a piano coach. And not just for competitions, not just for exams, but to really, challenge students to treat piano like a sport. But I don't even know if that makes sense to do that. I mean, I just love piano that much. I love piano playing that much. But, you have to be careful, because when you're talking about sports, you're talking about injuries, you're talking about things that may not be healthy, for students to pursue if they're not built to handle the sport and things like that. So, please take that lightly. Don't take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it that I'm saying that piano should be a sport. But I just, I'm really into sports and watching sports, as you may know. And so I really, and some of my students and families are too. They love sports. For example, tennis. So, but just imagine that by the standard of what can become a sport and what's not a sport, that piano became a sport. Anyway, having said that, I have some students that are very interested in competitions. They have the type of families that want to have them become better and better at the piano and play impressive sounding music, which that's debatable as well. So what is impressive sounding? I think what's impressive sounding to a teacher versus what's impressive sounding to the untrained ear they're two different things. That's what I want to say. So either way, a competition is a competition. And so I'm giving a shout out to the students that are in the process of either preparing for exams or competitions. Good luck to you all, and I look forward to working with you. Also, big shout out to my students that are preparing for recitals. I guess some students expect to do more than one recital a year, and then you have those who shy away from recitals. I mean, it's a different ball game, I think, for different students. And so you have the one student on the one hand who did just very well in the first recital and never did a recital again. And then you have those who have done recitals in the past with other students, with other teachers. And then you have the students that look forward to recital prep every year, and they really want to play something that they're excited about. So I have a couple of students like that this year. So I just really want to give a shout out to them. Good luck in your recital preparation. Please don't hurt yourself. I mean, we talk a lot about wellness on this podcast. And speaking of which, you are invited to listen to the CMajor radio show a little bit later on following this podcast, because we will be talking about music making and wellness. So I am a big believer that music can be used to help you keep healthy in some way, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically. You don't have to be a patient to need to keep well with music making. And so as teachers, we all try to keep well, I think, so that we can stay teaching our students. And so wellness as a topic in that way is also important to this podcast. And so just listen if you can. Join us over at the CMajor radio show shortly after today's podcast episode. And I look forward to seeing you over there. So I just want to say that I've had some students that were under the weather as well. So I don't know if they're going to be able to prepare for recital this year. It's been a concern this week especially, and last week, of all the things that are going on in the greater New York area. And so I just wish you all the best, to be well and to keep healthy the best that you can, and to feel better. But shout out to my students that are preparing for recitals, and shout out to my students that are recovering from bad colds. Okay, now this next shout out is going to be a combination shout out. I very rarely do this, but it's a shout out to a couple of students that are learning John Legend pieces, You Know Who You Are, and a couple of students that are learning jazz and blues pieces, You Know Who You Are, and pieces about birds. There are some students that are learning pieces about birds. When I think of compositions about birds, there are a couple of composers that come to mind. See me offline for those. And then I have a couple of students that are working on sonatinas. So that brings me to my next thing that I'm going to talk about in today's episode. And so it's part of the music lesson. We will be going over some terms. If you do not know what sonatina is, stay tuned. We're about to tell you. But anyway, big shout out to those students I just mentioned. And good luck with preparing those pieces that you really, really enjoy playing. Okay, now, today's lesson. So, just shout outs, yes, but we wanted to throw in a little bit of a lesson. And this is to really encourage those students who are learning musical terms. Because usually at the end of your method book, there is a list of terms. If it's not at the end of your method book, look at the beginning. Sometimes they do it in the review. Or if it's not in the beginning of your book or at the end of your book, look throughout the book and look for terms. So you can start writing those down, keeping a notebook for yourself. And then if you really want to get serious about learning musical terms and definitions and learning about composers and theory and instruments and vocal ranges and you're just really curious, if you're that type of student, get yourself a dictionary. Find a dictionary of some sort to start to study and just making notes. And so I mentioned the word sonatina. Raise your hand if you know what a sonatina is. And raise your hand if you don't know what a sonatina is. Okay, well, I'm looking it up for you right now, and I just have to say, I really love reading the dictionary. It's how I became really, really good at spelling, and it's a favorite pastime of mine. Now, just a regular dictionary, too, not just a musical dictionary. So, this is something you can carry in your backpack, you can carry in your tote, you can carry in your satchel, you can carry it in your crossbody purse or your body pack. And if you look up sonatina, it's under the heading of song forms, and it just says a short sonata. So then the question becomes, what is a sonata? So if you go into that further, it says sonata is a multi-movement composition for solo instrument, occasionally with piano accompaniment. So that's interesting. So it's almost like they leave the piano out of this definition. I mean, when I think of sonata, I think of a piano composition. But they're saying it's a multi-movement composition for solo instruments. So that means you can have a sonata for clarinet, you can have a sonata for bassoon, you can have a sonata for tuba. And so look it up for yourself. See what you're finding. This is not our usual dictionary. We usually use a more concise dictionary, which is more extensive. But this is literally a pocket dictionary that I was very lucky and fortunate to get my hands on. So I'm going to be carrying this one around and just having it with my piano lessons and having it with my students to have a conversation about music. And I do encourage my students to have a conversation about music. You know what? I'm going to look up a couple of more terms with you. This is such an interesting little pocket dictionary here, and I'm excited about it. And I'm going to just take a little bit of a music break right now, and I'll be right back. You're listening to CMajor Before the Show. you here on CMajor Before the Show. I'm your host, CMajor Porter. Thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday afternoon. It's about 5:30 Saturday evening in the New York area. And I'm looking at this dictionary. I just love it. It's so helpful to just be able to turn to something and say, oh, you don't know what I mean by dynamic marks? Well, look at this. Look at this page. Oh, you don't know what I mean by harmonic minor scales? Let's take a look. Here's the proof right here. And so for my students that are learning to have dialogues about music making and learning to have a conversation over a cup of coffee, you know how I enjoy a really good cup of coffee. And for those that are interested in learning other languages, you know, this is so helpful for something like that. So I have students that are traveling all the time. They're going to be traveling to places where they can actually see some of the history that we talk about in our piano lessons and their method books. But I want to say I really enjoyed looking at this concise book because not only do they have information about composers, they have information about musicians, and I was really surprised to see Michael Jackson in here and Quincy Jones. Unbelievable. And so get yourself one of these if you can. If you need a recommendation about the resource, as always, see us offline. Check us out over at Facebook, over at CMajor Before the Show. Our job over there is to try to get you interested in piano lessons, or if you have any questions, then see us over there. You're going to see some nice postings of pictures, also coupled with our main website at WordPress, CMajorPorter.com, where we post photos of just topics that go along with our fun music exercise, which used to be homework. Next week, we're going to be talking about nail playing. Believe that. Believe it or not. It's something that just keeps coming to my attention. The students that want to play piano but not cut their nails. And then I have students who cut their nails perfectly, then they turn around and get nails. Okay. Have to laugh about that. I think it's because nail tips are so popular nowadays. But I learned how to be playful with my students and not just shake a finger and say, you must. We don't do that over here. So, hopefully you learned something in today's episode that you didn't already know. And I just encourage you to keep going with your music making. Don't give up whatever you do. See us over at the CMajor Radio Show. We're going to be talking about music making and wellness in a way that you haven't heard us talk about it on the podcast before. So join us for that. Don't forget the time change for tomorrow, daylight saving time. And nail playing, that's going to be next week. Not sure what I'm going to title the episode, but stay tuned for that and be well. Just thank you for sticking with us. I'm also going to be posting it's a picture that I designed for the podcast. So look for that over at our Facebook page. Also a special shout out to Spreaker. I really appreciate what you guys do and helping to keep us here live and sometimes recorded here for the podcast. And just know that we really are looking forward to growing with you. So from the CMajor Before the Show team and the CMajor Radio Show team, thank you so much for having us on, and we look forward to growing with you. Thank you so much for the webinars and the other resources that you provide and make it easy. And so I'm excited to see where podcasting is going. It looks like everybody's trying to have a podcast nowadays, but I love it because without this, I don't think I would be able to say what I need to say on a weekly basis. And even if I skip a week, I feel like there's something that I just need to share with you about what's going on. I'm excited for my students. I'm excited for the families that still believe in music making. I'm excited for my colleagues and my professors. And before I leave you, I want to leave you with some humor today. And it's from a book that I actually picked up by attending a studio taping. By the way, there are some really great producers in New York that are super friendly, and they just really have good words to put out into the universe towards audience members, and I really appreciate you guys. You know who you are. This book is dedicated to a lot of things, but there's a chapter in the book that talks about laughing, and it says we all love to laugh. It just feels good, and we always remember the funny things, but it's because we want to laugh again. And laughter is also the great connector. We love to share laughs with friends, old and new. Humor is, in fact, the best social. I don't even know how to use this word, but I'm going to say it's probably the best social factor there is, if that makes sense. They use a different word. But anyway, it breaks down social barriers fast and brings us together. And that's the opinion of this book. So I just encourage you guys to put some humor in your life and to find the funny and the fun in what you're doing with your music making, and to be playful, and to find out what makes you laugh, really. Put some laughter in your life as well as some music making. Continue to make the best music you can make. It's all about you and what you can do, and just give your very best. And we will see you next weekend. I'm excited about that. Next weekend, right here on CMajor Before the Show. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Be safe out there. Be well. And I'll see you on the next podcast. And join us over at the CMajor Radio Show following today's episode. Take care.